Good afternoon, everybody, and a warm welcome to the book launch of The Energy Path, The Art of Leading with Love. I'm really pleased to be here with you guys who have shown up, and I'm so much looking forward to share my reflection and thought and philosophy behind the book. So let's get started and let's have a look what it's all about. So, The Energy Path, The Art of Leading with Love. What is it about? Well, first of all, it starts with who I am, because the question is that for most people that we seek for is the difference between what I am and who I am. And starting with what I am, my name is Ulrik Nerloe, I'm 43 years old, and for the last 10 years I've been working with people around the world. What is very interesting for me is the unconscious part in people. And what I do is actually to let people on a path. I'm a pathfinder, really showing people the path towards who are they in the most authentic way. So what I do is that I generate energy. I show a path of energy, which is also the reason why I've given myself the title, the Chief Energy Officer, which of course I'm going to come back to with regards to the book. I'm a holistic mentor, I'm an entrepreneur, and I do a lot of keynote speaks as today, and I'm a writer, and yes, I'm married, and I have 2 children, which are, by the way, not children, but probably I should call them teenagers, just to be on the safe side. I already published my first book, which was called the Life Bridge, From an Unconscious to a Conscious Life. I was so privileged that it became an international bestseller, and I've been number 1 in 5 different countries, number 2 in the UK, on actually 4 different categories. But within dreams and self-help, I've actually been on the top seller list for more than 3 months. Now the next book is out, and that is what it's about today, and it's called, again, The Energy Path, The Art of Leading with Love. So with those words, I'm really pleased that you're here, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some of my knowledge and philosophy and the reflections behind the book. So what is it all about? It's a mindset, and it's a mindset of really moving ourselves from unconscious to conscious. Now, there are some research that has proven that up to 90 to 98% of what the average person is doing, thinking, and feeling is unconscious today. And what can we do about that? First of all, I would suggest that you would open up your curiosity. You need to open your curiosity during this session and in life in general. As children, we ask approximately 4,000 questions a day. That number turns to 40 questions a day when we grow up. That's a huge missing out on potential. So looking into what we're going to discover and work with and talk about today with regards to the book is definitely something that requires curiosity. Now, it's a balance of the flow of life in a new reality. For sure, COVID has changed tons of things. And I had a conversation with one of my clients the other day, and she told me that they had a conversation in the organization. This was a very large organization. And the discussion was that what has actually changed and what is still the same. And their conclusion was the coffee machine and where it was placed, and the copy machine was also something which was still there in the same place. Their conclusion was that the majority of everything else had changed. Now, that might be a little bit black and white, but nevertheless, we are in a new reality. We have to think different. We have to act different. We need to change tons of habits, and that's going to require an enormous work for us people to still keep a balance in life. Energy consciousness is what I believe is the foundation for the future. For the last 10 years, I've been working in both small entrepreneurial companies, huge organizations, and mid-sized organizations. And it's all been about creating energy and working with energy consciousness. Energy consciousness is something we're going to talk about through the keynote. But energy consciousness is so important because that's what's going to change our consciousness and awareness in our life. As persons, as groups and organizations, as a global citizens. So that's definitely one of the things that we're going to look into more into during this keynote speak. Transforming human energy into fulfilling life work. That's what I believe is what we will be able to. But I also believe this is something we need to do. Because previously we went to work to survive. We've been through a massive change since that actually started up. And now the time has come to really look much more into the fulfilling life work. Young generations are so much more aware of this, and us as a generation, as me, is in a completely different stage on actually really demanding, requiring much more fulfilling life work. I believe that this is some of the things that we will be either forced to or practically can work with consciously in the future of work. Energy is also about the infinite potential. Because previously it was about winning and losing. I do not believe that's the future that we should build on. I do believe that we should believe that we have an infinite potential and there's an infinite loop. You probably heard about Simon Sinek that refers to his infinite game. And the infinite game is as well is about something that is in a loop, something that keeps building up. I'm of course going to come back to that, but nevertheless, the mindset change of winning and losing by perhaps running our life, running our businesses in a very exclusive way, we need to transform much more to inclusive. And that requires a completely different kind of mindset and a completely different way of acting in our daily life. So it's all about energy, and energy is all about us as people, the things that we do. What we requires to move from A to B is energy. I arrived this place in my car. If there was no gasoline in my car, the energy source would be gone, and therefore I wouldn't have been able to arrive. If I haven't slept, if I hadn't eaten, if I hadn't been drinking water all through the day, I most likely would not have had any energy today as well by standing here in front of you guys, and therefore my energy would be low. So basically, whether it's a process, whether it's a transportation, whether it's us people, energy is something that is required to moving from A to B. By those words, let's have a dig in and get a little bit more understanding of how I think and the philosophy behind the book. March 2020, that was definitely a wake-up call for the world. I recall that I had a conversation with my wife, and she was like, you know what, it's never going to reach us. And a month afterwards, we were a part of COVID. Now, COVID started out as a health crisis, but what came to me very fast was that it changed radically and rapidly to a truth crisis. A truth crisis of people actually being locked up for the first time in centuries. Now, when we are being locked up as people in the beginning, we like it, and some people don't like it. But nevertheless, what I experienced with myself and others was the fact that people started to listen. People actually was forced to stop up and listen to the voice that they had inside of themselves. For some people, a voice that they have heard for a very long time. For other people, a voice that had been screaming, but nobody had listened to. But the demand for actually being forced to stay at home required and forced us as well to change habits. It required us and opened up for the opportunity to ask questions, initial substantial questions of, why is it that I do as I do? Who am I? What is freedom to me? Why is it that I choose to work as I work? The people I surround myself with, are they the right people? Am I happy? And so on and so forth. So substantial questions towards life that really opens up the mind, but as well gives us challenges. And we can already now see the statistics that are confirming that a lot of people are suffering right now. The reason for that, again, is energy. And a lot of people at the moment are suffering. We are tired. We are lacking energy. We are in a stage where we have actually spent so much energy looking inwards, finding out what does this mean to us. This uncertainty of what does COVID mean, how long it's going to last, and the insecurity, what's going to happen to me, and what's going to happen to you guys, is something that takes tons of energy. Now, one of our Danish philosophers, He said in the 1850s, his name is Kierkegaard, he said, everybody loves development, but nobody wants change. And when we look into statistics of how we have characterized challenges for top management for the more than 10 years, we have always said that actually people working against or being against of changes is one of the biggest challenges of organizational development and strategy implementation. Now, I believe that's completely wrong. I believe that the meaning behind the changes that we implement, that we present to people, or actually the lack of meaning, is what's hindering us to change organizations. Because when we look at people, how they changed like this. In the moment that COVID hit, we went from working at offices to working at home. We completely destroyed the paradigm of the belief that we could not be productive working from home compared to being at the office. So things changed incredibly fast. That had a price, and it was a price of energy. Some people had to be parent, teacher, and still maybe husband, wife, friend, family, and at the same time work. That has, of course, a significant impact on the personal energy. And that is why loads of people at the moment feel fatigue. How does energy consciousness then contribute to the rebuilding that we are facing right now? It has a significant impact. Because when we consciously become aware of we lack energy, that's the moment where we actually can do something about it. The worst thing is that for a lot of people right now, it's a strange feeling inside. It's something that we cannot put words into. It's just a feeling. And the interesting thing about energy is that we can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't hear it, but we can feel it. And when we talk about energy in organizations, for most people, we do not think of it as energy. It's just the feeling. Some call it the spirit of the company. But whereas if we talk about a concert or a sport event, we can immediately remember that it's about energy, because it's very much acknowledged that artists and sports people are very much depending on energy. Now, there's no difference to sports or to artists and company structures. People come into work. So when we actually need to rebuild, and I do believe we have to rebuild. This is a fresh start. This is a huge opportunity that we have right in front of us to take the best from the past and create the best for the future. And really understanding that we need positive energy to create positive result is what is needed. So what can you do? Well, there's 3 things that we can focus on. First of all, we need to let's see if it's working with me. Yes, be curious on the individual's needs. Now, one of my favorite quotes is, treat people different to treat them equal. And right now, that is exactly what is needed. We as individuals need to stop up and take this opportunity to really put the questions in like, what makes me happy? What gives me energy? When I'm experiencing overall, no matter where I work in the world, the majority of people know everything about the things they do not want to have in life. What's not making them happy? What is not generating energy? But very few people have actually spent time on finding the questions of, what is it that makes me happy? What is it that generates energy? And I'm in the strong belief that what I think is what I get. Which means that if I only know everything I do not want to have, all the things I don't want to experience. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get divorced. I don't want to lose my job. And that is what I think unconsciously every single day. That is then as well what I attract. While changing the mindset, putting focus into a much deeper understanding and consciousness of what is it I do want to have. What is it that do generate my energy? That is one of the first things that I need. As well, for the individual need, is a question of how much should we work from home? How much should I actually work at the office? What is the best balance in life for you and for us as a company? and finding the answers to bridge these things. Storytelling is the next thing. COVID have had very much different impacts on people. And the impact has stories behind. But as well, taking the time to look into the stories that we are telling ourselves. In my experience, the majority of all people have much higher self-confidence than self-esteem. Self-esteem is the love for ourselves, whereas self-confidence is what we perceive for the surroundings, what we persuade the surroundings of. That we are actually very good at this. And taking the time right now to consciously put a focus into the love for oneself, our appreciation, the stories that we tell ourselves. So many people are their biggest criticizer. And when I sometimes ask people, the way that you talk to yourself, would you ever talk to me like that? And people are like, oh, no, I would never dare to do so. Okay, question is, does it make you happy to talk in bad language to yourself? To really kick yourself, to beat yourself up, to criticize yourself? Or is it just a habit, a story that you constantly use to watch yourself? Now is a great time to change that. Because just imagine an organization or a family or just your life where you would be filling yourself with love, appreciation, acknowledgement every single day. Energy creation. Energy creation is what's needed right now because it's so low. And when we come back to the organizations, haven't been away, haven't been to the office for ages, a lot of organizations and people are longing to come back. But when they come back, they get so disappointed because they think and they believe that the feeling's going to be the same. But it's us people who generate the energy. This is what we take in when we arrive at the office. But if there hadn't been anyone for ages, energy is gone. And we need to regenerate this. And this is why I'm saying this is an opportunity right now to actually discover the best from the past, the best from the present, and the best we wish for the future. But it also and always starts with the question of, what is that makes you happy? It can be everything. It can be small things. It can be big things. It doesn't matter. Then what matters is actually to start to discover what the answer is. Take a few moments. Make your own energy check. Look at the people around you. Ask them the question, how is your energy? But use this as well every single day to check your energy. Really sense how are other people. Because you have, of course, most likely I would say, you have experienced people, colleagues, family members, friends, where the energy is always low. And the thing is, I don't believe there's anyone that's waking up in the morning thinking, hey, I'm going to drain everybody from energy all day. There's nobody who's doing that. It's just a story. It's a habit. It's a behavior that's hindering us to get the energy flow. But if nobody dares to actually show curiosity, to have the courage to say, hey, are you okay? Because I'm experiencing you have a low energy and you're draining a lot of us. So are you okay? This is what is needed because this is what connects people. And key people connect with people, not just roles with roles. And the energy path, my book, is very much about understanding the importance of how we connect as people. Because we're so disconnected. It's too much I. How about we? How about us? How about creating societies where we are much more dependent on one another? Because we are depending on one another when we look at the global situation. So energy, what is it? In a theoretical understanding, this is how it defines the strengths and the vitality required for sustained physical and mental activity. What does that mean? Well, these two gentlemen, Mr. Nerloe and Schwartz, they were for many years ago. They were looking into what we called the powerful engagement, which is looking into physical, mental, emotionally, and spiritual energy. And when we look into organizations, we've been working with this model. It's very much implemented. It's found in a lot of things that we do. The problem is that we actually more or less stopped at the emotional level. I would actually say, in my experience, we've worked very much with the physical and the mental energy, but we down prioritized the emotional level, and we definitely didn't work with the spiritual energy. Now, spiritual energy is nothing to do with religion. It's to do with meaning, purpose. And when we look into buzzwords as purpose-driven leadership, which is one of the things that's going a lot around at the moment, I would say it's just a buzzword. Because behind purpose-driven leadership is energy consciousness. And with 98% of what we do, think, and feel right now being unconscious, we are so much limited in the awareness and consciousness of energy. And when we actually have to start that, we're being forced to start in a completely different way. Because the way in is the way out. And this means that we need to increase our ability to reflect. Now, in average, we think 60 to 80,000 thoughts every single day. And for the average person, up to 80 to 85% of those thoughts are based on fears, worries, and concerns. Now, the worst thing is that up to 90% of the thoughts you had today were the same thoughts you had yesterday. Have a guess what you're going to think tomorrow. How do we change that? By becoming active listening to our own thoughts. By stopping up and become much more reflective. By taking in the inner monologue, the choice of words that we pick for ourselves. Because this is what is needed. We need to become much more reflective. Because missing human insights is right now one of the most and greatest limitations for humanity. Because we're called human beings, but for the majority of the time, we are human doings or human becomings. And we need to change that. So here's a question for you guys. Who are the 3 to 4 most important people in your life? I'm just going to give you a few seconds and have a thought about that. So here's another question. Did you have yourself on the list? The majority of all people who gets this question are saying, my wife, my husband, my kids, my mom and dad, my siblings, my friends. I was working with a woman, she was very lonely, and she said, when I asked her this question, she replied, can I say my goldfish? And of course she can say her goldfish. But in my opinion, it's the wrong answer. The right answer should be me, 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 and me. And I'm not talking about ego here, but I'm talking about that I'm experiencing loads of people who are forgetting that they are the most important person in their life. That people who constantly put themselves in the back. People who constantly saying, yes, of course I would like to, but the inner monologue, dialogue that we have inside of ourselves is, and why is it you said yes to that? Because you know you're supposed to say no. And the other way around, people saying no to something where they actually should say yes. People who do not feel that they deserve. People who constantly give away things that they shouldn't give away. Energy. You cannot share things you don't have. And that's much, much easier to understand when we talk about, for instance, money. But energy is like money. It's a resource. And energy is as limited as money. Now, being the most important person in your life is nothing new. Because once upon a time, loads of us were sitting in an airplane. And every time we went through the safety description, safety presentation, we talked about in case of emergency and a drop in the cabin, air masks will come out. And it's so important for you to put the mask on before you help anyone else. By understanding this and actually taking it seriously, we can make magic in us and around us. And that's what I'm trying to actually show a path of in the energy path. Because when I've been working with people, I've done nearly 6,000 hours of one-to-one mentoring with everything from top CEOs, political people, teenagers, housewives, loco drivers from locomotives. And no matter what, I am still so pleased to see what a huge potential we have as people. A potential just waiting inside of you to be released. Of course, the challenges of being locked up have really limited that situation. And we, most of us, or a lot of us at least, have forgot about these things. I saw a tendency last spring where I actually got very, very pleased because it seemed like a lot of people were actually asking questions of substantial character. But I also see people right now desperately trying to come back to how things used to be. People who have really not learned anything from a global crisis as we are still in, partly. In the future, we need to understand what matters is the energy that is in flow. Now, flow is not a new concept. We have heard about flows in a lot of different aspects. But energy blockades is something that I worked with for the last 10 years. Energy blockades are the things that is hindering us to be in flow. The inner dialogue, the criticizing of ourselves is one of the examples. The lack of self-esteem is one of the other things that is hindering us to being flow. The lack of love for ourselves, the ability to wake in the morning and look at ourselves and tell ourselves, I love myself, I am good as I am. To really taking care of our heart is what is hindering the energy to flow. Now that's in us people. But in organizations, it's exactly the same. Bad management is one of the things that really, really is hindering energy to flow. Lack of communication, lack of trust. Fear is on a rise in loads of companies right now, which means that no trust, we get scared people. Scared people work as reptiles. How much can we gain from that? Very, very, very little. Low communication level, lack of transparency, lack of purpose. Why is it that we do so? When I've been working with strategy, I don't believe in the concept of strategy. I believe in dreams. Why? Because when we looked into statistics of strategy, we have only become worse and worse implementing them for the last 10 years. And the majority of the reason is that people never actually engage in them. And I believe the reason for that is that a strategy is a cognitive thing. It's something we use our brain for. It's something we think through. And when we communicate it, we are only using our brain and not our heart. Whereas a dream is something we feel. And when we share a dream, other people feel it. And when we feel it, we can identify with it. And we can identify ourselves with it. We can relate to it. And we can relate to something. We can engage in it. Because suddenly we understand, what does this mean to me? I can actually feel, does this make sense to me or doesn't it? And if we have an organization with trust, we are actually able to put our hand up and say, hey, this feels strange. I need some more explanation. Or is there anything I haven't understood? So we have the courage to be curious. Now, energy blockades is exactly the same as a dam. When you go into the forest and you find a small lake where there's beavers who have built a dam. The water rises on one end and very, very little flows through in the other end. Energy blockades has the same effect. So when we actually are filled with energy blockades, nothing or very limited things are happening. The beautiful thing about that is that when we actually put a focus into this, when we start to identify the energy blockades, and we start to work with them, remove them, low-hanging fruits in most cases, we are experiencing the same thing as we would do when we would start to remove the branches from the dam, from the beavers. One after another, we remove. And at a certain point, the pressure from the water will break through the dam, and water flows again. For the last 10 years, I've experienced the exact same thing when we've been working and removing energy blockades. No matter if it's a 2,000 employee company or 5, it's the same dynamics and it's the same aspects. Everything is connected and everything is depending on one thing: energy. And it's interconnected energy circuits that we need to understand is the aspect of connecting. So when I talk about the energy in us, I'm talking about personal energy. The personal energy is what I'm responsible for. I can actually make a decision every single day of which energy I like to carry around. What is it that I want to bring in with the society? What is it that a kind of energy I want to bring into my family? What is it that I want to do with my clients? That's my decision. And yes, of course, there are terms that has an impact. But terms is like the sun goes up and sun goes down. Why fight it? It's there to stay. We can either accept it or think different about this term. And of course, happy guy. I did a keynote speak some years ago, and I was introduced as a genuine happy guy. And yes, I choose every day to be happy. But trust me, if my parents or if my children or wife are looking into this keynote speak, I can guarantee you they can confirm that I can have a bad day as well. I can be in a bad mood. But nevertheless, I can make the decision about my energy. And this is what we need to understand, as well with you. The person that brings the negative energy in is most likely not aware. And you have a task, actually, to help this person to change that. Why is that? It's because the social energy is what we share. So when I'm with you guys here in the room, and first we walked in, I brought my energy in, you brought your energy in. And the moment we were together here, we created what we call a social energy. Now, the social energy that we share makes us care and dare. And this is the thing. Because the social energy is what we connect to the universal energy, or the global energy, if you could call it that. It's what unites us. Which means that from the beginning, each of us in this room brought our personal energy in. Now we're sitting here sharing our social energy that you most likely, hopefully, gonna take with you in a positive way with the surroundings when you leave this room. And with the people you're gonna meet afterwards, they're gonna feel that you hopefully have had a positive energy experience, which means that suddenly you're generating and regenerating a circular energy system that keeps building upon itself. Starting with your personal energy, adding into our social energy that then connects to a global and universal energy, that then again contributes positively, because what you send from others generates energy to you that then you can add into a new social energy that can add into a global energy. This is what I've been implementing for the last 10 years with a huge impact on well-being, connectivity, clarity, honesty, transparency, love. Love for what it is. Love for what we do. Love for life. Love for the colleagues. This is why we're called Unified People. My company is called Unified People because it's all about unification, for being separated, to being connected, to be unified, not only with each other, but also with ourselves. Because as I said before, the energy we share makes us care and dare. Now then you might ask yourself, what has love to do with it? Well, it's all about love. Because when you meet people, I'm sure you tried this before, when you have met someone who loves what they do, you immediately get a positive feeling. And love, when we bring that into leadership, things change. It's not fluffy. It's not about everything should be pink. But it's all about us being connected, completely as we are as a family, or as we are with couples. And I had a wonderful experience that I describe in my book, where I was working with a CEO. He was German. We were having a really intense discussion. And I was swearing at him, to be honest, because I was furious. And when we arrived, he was in his car, I was in my car. And we arrived at the same location. And when he jumped out of the ... he was pointing at me saying, "Ha! I won the discussion." And like my head exploded literally because I thought he was a big ... But then he pointed at me and said, "Hey, it might be so that you didn't win this discussion. And you might be furious with me. But please remember, I like you very much. And I don't hope that's going to change anything between us. The fact that we agree to disagree." And at that moment, I was furious. But afterwards, I started to reflect. Because she was so right. Completely in a relationship, we can discuss. And we can fight sometimes. But we still forgive. We can be curious. But we also be reflective. We can be demanding. But we can also be waitful. There's so much aspect of leading with love. Especially when we understand the power of leading oneself with love. Because some of the best leaders that I've met, and there's actually been studies done that are described in the book as well, where they actually prove through research that it has a huge, huge impact, very impactful aspect when we implement love in organizations and in our leadership style. Which totally makes sense, because when you feel loved, you let go. You become free. And freedom is something that most people seek for, unconsciously, for most. So instead of being frightful, it's about being hopeful. Instead of being closed and afraid, it's about being open and loving. I always talk about the importance of bringing our heart to work. You see, I have it on my clothes. You saw my heart before. And it sounds so simple, and it's not, of course. It's something that requires a much deeper understanding. We also have to acknowledge that something that is for the individual as well. So what I mean by bringing my heart to work is not necessarily what it is to you guys. But nevertheless, it makes a difference. Because when we are actually measuring when we have our heart to work, when we are bringing heart and soul into work, things change. And instead of you looking into KPIs, How about just looking into the feeling? And I had an experience where I worked with an international client, where we implemented over a 2-year period the process of bringing love into leadership. Performance had gone up, the well-being and the employee engagement surveys had exploded in a level we've never ever experienced before. People were connected. Right people were on right positions, which is also very much about having and bringing our heart to work. Because so many people are actually stuck in their work. Why? Because we're stuck in the past, we're waiting for the future and missing out on the present moment. But when we're actually putting our focus into whether people bring their heart to work or not, it's crystal clear for the people who have actually emotionally and mentally, energy and soul-wise, have left the company. And for the majority, it's actually positive because the person wakes up and realizes, hey, I left the company for years ago, for ages. I need to do something different. And the person leaves the company. That's a huge success. Not only for the person itself, but as well for the company, because it releases positive energy by getting new sources in. And actually experiencing the impact of going from only KPIs to heartful. Of course, there's a paradigm change. And back to the international client, because he was in front of his board of directors, and the chairman of the board said, but this sounds wonderful, and I see all the figures and the performance results. But he said, how do you measure it? And the CEO replied, how do you measure other people's feelings? The interesting thing was that this board of directors, they choose to go to this location every time they had a very important meeting. Because what they discovered was actually that their energy was different, that their results were different, that the meetings was much more constructive. They were faster, they were more clear, they were not tired afterwards. They couldn't put the words into why. They could just say, it feels fantastic. And that's what it's about. So the human energy connection is what it's all about. Connecting us human to human instead of role to role. And yes, we should still have responsibilities. And yes, we should still carry our role. But actually showing up as who we are and leading from the heart, communicating from the heart, daring to actually find the balance between body, mind, and soul. Having the courage to say what we feel and actually bringing that into the content of our daily work is what connects us. It's about spreading positive energy because energy is magnetism. So we're experiencing something negative. We always say, hey, other things gonna pop up which is negative as well. Yes, of course, because that is what we're sending out. And the same goes when we spread a positive energy. It's about growing your curiosity, really opening up and thinking, could this be happening? We should experience much more instead of being judgmental or conclusive on forehand, thinking that's never going to happen. We should connect with empathy. It's like feelings has been something which was not allowed in companies for centuries. But come on, we're human beings. We feel. And working with empathy is something where we feel appreciated. And I know about you guys, but I mean, some of the most important things in my life is to feel appreciated instead of feeling taken for granted, which is something I really dig into in my new book as well. There's magic in actually taking an organization and a corporate culture and change it to feel appreciated and implement empathy. Switch your intuition. Sense. Reflect on when was the last time you made a decision where your head said, this is going to be an incredible situation, but where your intuition told you, this is never going to work. Where your mind were more correct than your intuition? I've asked thousands of people this question. I've never, ever got a good answer for that. Because the intuition is so sharp. And when we actually find the trust in our intuition, when we connect with it, and when we listen to it, we are so much better at making right decisions and fast decisions. We need to unpack the present. As I said before, so many people are stuck in the past. They're waiting for the future, but missing out on the present moment. But it's all about starting now, right now, in this present moment. Because we need to break out. We need to break these bubbles. We need to come out and connect. We need to really start to engage and open up for personal, social, or global energy if we want to move into a much stronger and sustainable future where people actually want to be a part of the company. Talent attractions. Energy is magnetism. We want to create the biggest magnet that attracts the biggest resources, the greatest resources. It's not a matter of trying to hold on to our employees. It's a matter of actually creating the purpose to stay. By going into full circles, connecting energy circles, that is at the end, connecting everything, me, us, and everyone else. So we can come together. So we once for all can be one for all. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your presence. I so much appreciate it. If you feel like reading my book, if this has been inspirational, I could suggest that you could go into www.energy-path.com and you can purchase the book. And otherwise, do not hesitate to reach out. If you go to unifiedpeople.com, you can as well get a lot of inspiration. So thank you so much for being here today. I highly appreciate it and hope to see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.